topic is going to be parental alienation. Okay. This is a hot topic, right? And so a lot of times we find that cases that can begin in family court or divorce court can quickly transition into criminal court simply because of the parental alienation, parental interference. Sometimes it can turn deadly and violent. You'll see situations of family violence all the time as a result of this tug of war when it comes to the minor children. So, important topic we're going to discuss today. Let me give you a quick rundown. Here's a roadmap of what's on the horizon. We're going to define what parental alienation is. We're going to talk about some ways to recognize it, provide some examples. We'll talk a little bit about how it can get started, some potential red flags, and then we'll talk about how to potentially address it and maybe remedy it through the courts, and when it might be time to bring an attorney in to help you address what's going on with your visitation as well as your custody. Okay. All right. So thanks for tapping in with us. Let's go ahead and do a deep dive into this topic. Okay. So one of the most emotionally damaging things that can happen during a custody case is when a child is pushed away from one parent. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today, what that looks like. And again, as I mentioned, we'll talk about how it might be able to be addressed. So, let's start with a definition. What is parental alienation? And it's when one parent intentionally or even unintentionally, because that happens sometimes, damages the child's relationship with the other parent. Okay. And so that can be negative influence, it can be manipulation, it can be turning one child or if there are multiple children, it can be all the children against one parent. Okay, so it's really about interfering with the custodial or even the non-custodial parents' rights in that parent-child relationship. So that's what we're looking at. That's what we're talking about when we say parental alienation. Okay, now let's talk specifically about what it might look like. Let me provide you some real world examples. All right. So again, kind of mentioned when one parent speaks negatively about the other. You hear this all the time. Your mama ain't shit, your daddy ain't shit, or bad mouthing. One parent's side of the family. Okay, that can be considered a parental alienation, and there might be language in your parenting plan that really discourages that. And if there's not language, then there might need to be. Okay, because that is really a pathway to alienation. A lot of times it starts psychologically. Now another way is blocking communication with one parent. Okay, so one parent might not have access to the minor child anymore. That access might be telephonic apps access, or it might be video access, or it just might be physical access, right? And so we do see that quite often. That brings a lot of folks to our doorstep, and we usually we will get that addressed if that could be potentially an issue. The other is going to be interfering with visitation. Okay, and so that's another that we sometimes see. It's not that the non-custodial parent in this instance might not be able to visit with their child. It's just that when it's time to exercise their visitation, there might be a lot of roadblocks put in their way by the custodial parent or vice versa, that might shorten their time or have their time canceled because of other scheduled activities, those things, or manipulation of the child to where the child doesn't want to go and visit with that other parent. That can be ways of interfering with visitation. Another is just false accusations. We see this all the time, and this is what I talked about. These custody cases, these parental alienation cases are parlayed into temporary protective orders, or become issues of family violence, right, and make their way into quasi criminal court, right? And so that is another way of interfering with one parent's rights or sabotaging the parent child relationship with that other parent. Usually, it's going to be the non-custodial parent. Non-custodial parent being the parent that exercises the visitation. They have the child less than 50% of the time. All right, or encouraging a child to reject a parent. Okay, and so we see that as well. Okay, just again, the mind games that are played with the child. The child is, immature, and we'll see one parent essentially just engage in conduct that is going to just psychologically wreak havoc on that young mind and really discourage the minor child from forming a bond with the other parent, and that can of course impact the overall relationship between that parent and the child, or making the child feel guilty about loving the other parent. Okay, and that's kind of all that's similar to what we've already discussed here. So, let me give you another example, real world example. A parent may say, "Hey, your mother doesn't really love you," or vice versa. Your dad doesn't really care about you, or your mom chose work over us. Or your dad, threw away not just our marriage, but they threw you away as well, right? Because they decided to, you know, be out in the world and do whatever and chase women, whatever, right? So those are examples of essentially the psychological warfare that we see sometimes when it comes to parental alienation, and how the discourse that we see between a parent and the minor child that might lead to parental alienation on the back end. Okay, so children should not feel pressured to take sides, but oftentimes, let's just be real, they are. And in most of these instances, they're going to take sides, especially if you're talking about a very bitter divorce, right? A lot of times we see the mom being made the custodial parent, and then the dad, the non-custodial parent. The divorce was a bitter part. They parted ways very bitterly, and the fighting hasn't ended just because the final divorce decree was issued. So there still is the emotional fallout that comes with a very bitter fight and a very long drawn out fight over maybe a custody battle, custody war, probably is the appropriate metaphor. And the kids are going to be in the middle of that melee. Okay. All right. So that kind of really segues into how does this alienation usually start? And it starts, the most common ways are going to be high conflict divorce cases. Okay. So if the parties are fighting and it's bitter, it's nasty, there's a lot of slinging, you can probably bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be some form of parental alienation if there are children involved, because kids a lot of times are low hanging fruit when it comes to using pawns on the chessboard to wound and to hurt the other party. Okay. So parents trying to exercise their visitation are oftentimes, discouraged to do so. And, there is just a back and forth that might go on for years, and in some instances, decades. You want an example in pop culture? Look at Deion Sanders, okay, and his wife, Pilar. I think only as of recently, Dion can really be in the same room. Of course, the boys, we're talking about Shador and Shiloh, love their parents, would love for them to get along. But if you have followed really their history of the parents I'm referring to, you are aware that, they had some serious legal issues over the course of their marriage, which led to a very bitter divorce. And if I'm not mistaken, a custody fight that ensued. And, there was elements of parental alienation. And, as a result, there's these years of conflict that are still, the residual impact of it is still being felt decades later. And their children are grown men now, right? However, that just lets you know a lot of times this stuff, it just hangs around, right? This anger, this animosity, the vitriol. And so the anger between parents, jealousy, revenge, and a big one that we generally will see new clients over all the time is new romantic interest. Okay, and so let's just say one parent has moved on romantically, and then you will see a situation where all of a sudden you're having issues with visitation, right? There was a social media post earlier that I chuckled because I generally, the men that come to us sometimes will share these messages that, God forbid, and this is for the folks that are unmarried, that your new girlfriend is prettier than your ex. If so, you're probably going to be put on child support, or you're going to have visitation issues. Okay, so that's not Genghis Khan's opinion, that is TikTok's opinion. Okay, and so that was a post that I recently saw on TikTok. However, it is very relevant, right? So what goes on sometimes with these new relationships, these new romantic interests, can absolutely impact visitation. And you have custody interference, you have parental alienation, all of that good stuff, which will land everyone back in court a second, third, fourth time, right? And we see it all the time. The courts are treated as revolving doors. People are coming back because of contempts. They're not following the orders. They're not following the parenting plan. They're violating the parenting plan, right? And then, of course, custody disputes, all right? So it's sometimes it starts very subtly, and it just like I said, it just bubbles into a new animal, and it becomes a situation where usually one of the parties will seek legal counsel, and that's how we generally will get our clients, people who are being victimized due to parental alienation. Okay, so I talked a little bit about some of those examples, how it can subtly get started. It can start with small comments. It can be withholding of information, and then it can just be scheduling conflicts, and it can be intentional scheduling conflicts, right? That's going to basically be parental basic custody visitation interference, right? So visitation interference. Okay, so how it impacts the children emotionally, you already know the answer. So the possible effects can be anxiety with the children, depression, confusion, guilt. Guilt is a big one. And then, of course, there's loyalty conflicts. Conflicts. This is one of the reasons why a lot of family courts do not let minor children be part of the litigation, right? You don't want to, create these loyalty conflicts, okay? And just create something internally inside of, a minor child. You're asking them to testify against their mom. You're asking them to testify against their father, okay? Anger, and of course, emotional instability can all be in as a result of this parental alienation, right? So children oftentimes love both parents. They have nothing to do with your romantic situation and your success or its failure. But they would love to have access to both parents. It's important that they have access to both parents, and for them to be well-rounded individuals. Okay, they were more than likely made in love, and so it's important that they get access to that library of resources from both parents. Okay, so that children can suffer emotionally, and frequently they do when they're placed in the middle of these adult conflicts, and then unfortunately the adults are usually too busy fighting to really realize it. And so, what it looks like in real life, what parental alienation looks like, is you might have a child that's refusing to participate in the visitation, repeating adult language. Usually, you'll hear that they're parroting what mom says, parroting what dad says, or parroting what the guardian has to say. They're becoming hostile to one parent without a real explanation, or hostile to one parent's family. And maybe one other parent is constantly canceling visitation, or trying to reschedule, to dissuade the maybe the non-custodial parent from exercising their visitation. And then the parents might be monitoring the calls, right, with the minor child, right? So one parent might, as parent is sitting there speaking with the minor child on the telephone or virtually, you'll see the custodial parent or the non-custodial parent in the background, hear them in the background making comments, or just over the shoulder of the minor child. And those can be warning signs and red flags of parental alienation. All right. Now, how it impacts custody cases, healthy relationship with both parents is what you want when when appropriate. Okay. And I do want to emphasize when appropriate. Sometimes one parent is a danger to the minor children, or it's just not in the best interest of both parents or guardians to have access to the minor children. But courts generally do want both parents to be active in the lives of the minor kids. And so a lot of times courts are very concerned with parental alienation and interference. And this is one of the reasons why it's important to, if you are a victim of it, to address it as quickly as possible, so it just doesn't, become something manifest into something that's, bigger. Like for example, you having no access anymore to your children. Okay, and it can cause long-term harm to the children. That's important to know as well. And obviously, as the saying goes, a bell can't be unrung, right? And so, the harm that is caused many times, it might be irreparable. You're losing time, you're losing years, you're losing months that you might never get back, right? And that relationship can be, beyond beyond repair, all right, sometimes. Making sure that you can co-parent as amicably as possible is important. But those and so that's what's important to the court, is that the parents are getting along. Okay. And so many judges do look on parental alienation negatively where there are custody disputes. And so you do want to bring that up if that's going to be an issue. And so here's some evidence that can be used in court to show that hey, I'm a victim of parental alienation. It might be text messages, emails, missed visitation records, and you do want to use we call Jedi mind tricks. You do want to use text. You do want to send emails when it's, if you've missed visitation, you want to follow up. You want to create a paper trail. Okay. Hey, we were supposed to exercise visitation this past weekend, Friday 6 to Sunday at 6. You told me that, our child was going to be out of town and, I'd be unable to exercise my visitation. This is the second occurrence. On this date, you said the same thing, etc. Right. So you want to keep a record, keep notes, right? Save emails, keep visitation records, right? Of the times that you've been missed. So when you go into court, hey, this has happened, Your Honor, this has happened 6 or 7 or 8 times, right? And here are the dates, right? And here are the emails, correspondence, and the text messages that show that I reached out to the other parent and I questioned, what was going on, what would be my makeup dates, etc. Right. So creating a paper trail, that's going to be those are going to be your exhibits. Okay. All right. And then of course witness testimony. Okay. So maybe there might be other witnesses that are involved that have watched or experienced you go through this situation and be maybe a victim of parental alienation or interference. Frequently you're going to find in the age of social media, there might be some social media posts, okay, where one parent is bad mouthing the other parent, okay, and or they may be saying something about not allowing their child to visit with the non-custodial parent or vice versa, okay. That kind of stuff is going to be great for court in terms of evidence, and you do want to bring it. Documentation matter, as you know. Courts are about what you can prove. Okay, so they are less interested in arriving at the truth than you proving your case. Okay, and you're going to do that with evidence and testimony. All right. So courts need evidence, not just accusations. So if you're showing up to court and you're simply accusing that other side of engaging in parental alienation, it's going to be harder for you to prevail if it's just going to be your word versus the opposing side. Okay. You need evidence. All right. And so you want to think about those things that I just discussed there. Okay. Now, here are some possible court actions that can happen, and I've seen it all when it comes to parental alienation. The judge can modify custody, right? If one person is just completely violating the judge's orders, and they're doing it continually in bad faith, the judge can say, you know what, we're going to flip flop custody, okay? So we're not going to have this problem anymore, or we're going to modify it. This is what it's going to look like now because you're a bad faith actor, and I'm just, I'm over it, okay? So a judge can say that. That is one potential remedy, right? Parenting plan changes, right? Same thing as custody. Counseling orders, right? Judge might order that one parent that is in violation of his orders or her orders into counseling. Reunification therapy. Okay, and that's of course if you're a non-custodial parent, for example, and you've your child has been alienated from you, the judge can order that therapy and counseling take place so that you can be reunified with the minor child. Okay, and that any damage that might have been done might be undone if possible. Okay, that's a potential option. And the other is just your regular contempt actions. Folks go to jail. We I've argued for the custodial parent to go to jail, and sometimes the judge will oblige. It's like lock a person up. Like, hey, you want to engage in this conduct? You want to continue to violate my orders? Hey, go sit down in the county jail for a while until you understand the importance of abiding by the parenting plan. And that's happened in a few of our cases, right? Doesn't always happen, and it shouldn't always happen. The parties should be able to co-parent peacefully, right? And for the if they're truly concerned about the best interest of the minor child, and so every case is different. Um, and so this is a perfect segue into what professionals might be involved in these types of cases. So the professionals that we see are going to be guardian ad litems. You might see a custody evaluator be part of an action where there is parental alienation going on, or where there is very bitter custody battle. You might see therapists involved as well as family counselors be involved. Okay. And so, again, each case is different. A judge is going to kind of maybe evaluate the family dynamics, and they're going to make their recommendations based on perhaps, even what some of those professionals' opinions might be on how to proceed and go forward. All right. So here's what parents should not do. All right, when it comes to really dealing with the other co-parent, using child as messengers, right? You want an example? Tell your daddy I said, or tell your mother, this is how it's going to be. Like that's these children are not messengers in the age of social media and in the age of technology. There are many ways to communicate with that opposing party. If you need to, you can write them a letter. All right, you can send it USPS. You can send it, by pigeon carrier. But however you send it, it should not be through the minor children. You should not make them a party to your mess. Okay, discussing the court with the children now, and we see this, and this is kind of despicable. You discuss what's going on in court, the custody fighting, the divorce with your child. Okay, and I don't know if it's to garner sympathy, or if it's to again engage in parental alienation, or to really turn the tide in terms of maybe the emotional fallout that the opposing side is going to see. But having a conversation with your child about the court proceedings. Hey, this is what happened in court today. Your dad is trying to take you away from us. Your mother is trying to split up the family. That is not luggage or baggage that the minor children should be carrying. Okay, their little shoulders should not be bearing that type of weight. That is for the adults. Okay, and so that can lead to parental alienation. You are on a pathway to parental alienation if you are engaging in that type of conduct. Recording children improperly. All right, and so sometimes we'll see one parent recording a child. You don't want to go over your dad's this tonight, do you? Or when you're over your mom's, you hate it over there, right? And recording the child, and then maybe trying to use that information as evidence in court. Those are, again, getting the minor children involved. These are the little red flags, that there might be some form of parental alienation going on, or encouraging disrespect, right? Encouraging the minor child to badmouth the other parent. So children should not become weapons in custody disputes, and we see a lot of it, and it needs to absolutely stop. If you're experiencing it, then you do want to do something about it, and that might mean contacting counsel. Okay. All right. Healthy co-parenting strategies. Here are a few of them. We wanted to never want to leave you without any potential remedies. Okay. So you want to try to have respectful communication with that co-parent. Going to be hard if y'all just went through a very bitter divorce. However, you do want to try where you can. You want to be consistent and encourage healthy relationships, and you want to try to keep the children away from the adult conflicts. Okay, so these discussions about the parental alienation and interference, they should not be happening where the children are the audience. Okay, that should be happening away from the minor children. So healthy co-parenting is going to be what's best, and if you can facilitate that, that's going to be even better. Okay. Now, when you should consider hiring an attorney, if there are repeated visitation interference incidents, right? You might want to get an attorney involved, so they can really get it addressed for you, and get it addressed for you fast. All right. If there are some false allegations against you, right? So sometimes there's false allegations of abuse. You might want to get an attorney involved before like defects gets involved, before there's temporary orders that are logged against you. Because if that happens, right, now you're looking at a potential criminal case, which could also interfere with things like your Second Amendment rights. It can interfere with your job opportunities, etc. Right. So you absolutely want to get an attorney involved if there are going to be and have been false allegations lodged against you. Communication breakdowns, custody disputes. Again, these are what times you want to get attorneys involved, and if there is emotional harm concerns. So if you feel like your kids are being harmed because of this, and let's be honest, most children that are engaged, that their parents are engaged in this parental alienation, or this kind of bad conduct, they are actually absolutely harmed by it. Okay. So here is how we can help. If you're engaged in custody disputes, if there's issues with the parenting plan, you're going through legitimation. If there's going to be needs to be some kind of modification because of what's going on, with visitation interference. If there's a contempt that might need to be filed because one party is ignoring the actual parenting plans that do exist, or you just have a high conflict child custody matter, divorce, or is a men's rights issue, then you probably need to give us a call, right? So we do same day consultations. We'll talk to you the same day. We have a lot of direct attorney client conversations. We offer weekly office hours, so we're always accessible. Coaching calls. You can always get a hold of us, and our practice is client centered, right? So our goal is to put an end to parental alienation. We believe that well rounded children come from loving families where both parents can co parent and can do so in the best interest of the minor child. You don't have to get along. You don't have, well, I should say this, you don't have to like one another, but you should be able to get along for the sake and welfare of the minor children. Okay. And so we believe that that is going to be in the best interest of the children for the parties to co parent so successfully. Okay. All right. So children deserve healthy, loving relationships where loving parents can essentially facilitate raising them and rearing them in a space where they feel the love and emotion from both sides, and not feel like they're being weaponized against another parent. Okay. All right. Thank you for joining us this evening. Make sure that you lock in with us. If you haven't already, like and follow. If you feel like this video was helpful, send it on to another parent that you know of that might be experiencing some form of either custody and parental alienation or visitation interference, or if they have some men's rights issues, or if they engage in a very high conflict family law case. We'd be more than happy to help them out. You can also hit the link in our bio. We have some great blogs, we have some great books, we have some great resources. Check those things out, and we'll see you next time.